Like in general, like when we're brewing pu'er, black teas, oolong tea, she has a much softer touch. So she does tend to bring out more the lighter, fruitier, floral notes of different teas. Whereas maybe I'm a little bit more heavy-handed. Probably get started now. So today our theme is Chinese black teas, and we're going to go through 2 Chinese black teas that we have in our flight pack. One is one that we've named Crimson Dusk, which is a Chinese black tea that's made from oolong tea leaves from southern Fujian, and the other one is an old tree red, which is I guess a more classical type of black tea. It's a type of Dianhong black tea. It's made from leaves from a wild tea tree.
First one we're gonna brew is the Crimson Dusk because it's kind of like a lighter type of black tea. We're gonna use like 93 degrees to brew Crimson Dusk, so not so high of temperature. Because we are using a very little teapot, so we're gonna steep it very quickly, and then it's pretty much like a Gai one. What is a Gai one? This one very little. It's probably only like 60 to 80 mils, very small.
Yeah, so like a tiny Gai one almost.
Yeah. Because we're using very little vessel, so I use slightly less tea leaves. I only use 4 grams. If you have a bigger one, just use 5 grams, it's fine.
It's got like just the tiniest bit of maltiness, not much. It's sort of somewhere like a bit fruity, a bit malty. It's nowhere near as malty as what you'd expect from say like a Dianhong.
Yep. And I do find that when you have the black teas that are made from oolong tea leaves, there is definitely a fruity note to that, and yeah, that seems to be a characteristic when they're using oolong tea leaves to make a black tea. But whereas when you compare it to like more traditional black teas, like either like a non-smoky Lapsang Souchong or the old tree red, which we're going to try later on, they tend to seem to have like a more of a malty characteristic. And I do find that you kind of have, like with Chinese black teas, you kind of have 2 ends of the spectrum. One which is like a light sort of floral characteristics, and then on the other end, it's like a stronger malty characteristic. And then this particular black tea kind of sits somewhere sort of in between. Like it's got a little bit of those lighter floral characteristics, and a little bit of the malt, but not a huge amount. And I find that the combination of those two sort of gives it that sort of fruity note.
I found that some Taiwanese tea producer, they would classify like, let's say our honey ochre red and our Crimson Dusk black tea as oolong tea, because some Taiwanese oolong tea can be quite heavily oxidized. So it's actually quite similar with the Crimson Dusk and the honey ochre red. So they actually saying this is the dark oolong.
Or a red oolong. Yeah, I don't know whether there's like an actual difference between a red oolong and this type of black tea, or whether it's just like kind of words that they're using because it's black tea that's made from oolong tea leaves, so they've called it red oolong, and it's not like a traditional black tea varietal. Maybe that's why, or maybe there's something else in there. It's an area that we're kind of need to explore a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
I find the way you're brewing today is actually quite. I think you brew this tea better than I do. I find every time I brew this tea, I'll probably add too much leaf. I'm a little bit heavy-handed.
Like this type of black tea, the tea leaves that made from the oolong varietal, it's quite sensitive. You need to kind of like pay more attention when you brew it. Like say, put in 4 grams. Yeah. So and this one is only like 60 ml, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but today the balance is it's.
I use
quite
lower
nice.
temperature, not very high, like 93, 92, 93, and I don't infuse it very long, so maybe that's why. So with this kind of black tea, the tea that made from the oolong tea leaves, they in terms of the process, they actually add extra process to making the black tea. So the traditional black tea, they don't have this like what is called shaking process. So the shaking process, it's usually only in the oolong tea making. So in this process, they actually bring up more of the floral and the fruity notes. So that's why this kind of black tea, they will have a little bit more of the fruity and the floral notes. But that also depends on the varietal as well. Usually the oolong tea varietal, they will have some extra like this like floral notes.
Yep.
Yeah, so it adds different like this like difference into the tea as well.
So moving on to Old Tree Red, and this time Old Tree Red, so from Yunnan, so it's a more classical kind of black tea, Dian Hong from Yunnan, and this one is made from wild kind of tea trees, which is why the leaves are kind of a bit more twisted and sort of wryly. It's a little bit rough, like the shapes are a little bit more inconsistent. Not a bad thing. But yeah, this time, and we're also brewing it in a Yixing Zhisha teapot. This little guy here. Technically, we've dedicated it to all of our Chinese black teas, but we tend to only brew it, like we tend to only brew Old Tree Red with this pot. Mainly because, like I find with the Zhisha, like with the Yixing teapots, they don't, like they bring out a lot of depth and a lot of strength in teas, but they don't necessarily bring out a lot of, I mean, I find that if we want to bring out more of those higher aromatic notes, those lighter, fruitier notes, we find that a Gaiwan usually does a better job of that. But for teas like this one here, where there's like more of that depth, more of those stronger malty notes, or like stronger, deeper flavor notes, we like to use these type of pots.
I noticed that in the package, there's like this kind of golden yellow powder that kind of comes off the leaf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It like coats the package. What is that?
It's the little hair from the buds. It turned into golden color, so you can see a lot of like those like little like powder kind of thing, but it's actually from the hair.
What makes a Dian Hong as opposed to other types of Chinese black tea?
It's a black tea from Yunnan. Like Dian is Yunnan, right? Hong is red tea, so it's called Dian Hong.
Yeah.
Yunnan black tea is Dian Hong. Every region, they really want to boost the profile of the tea. So they're saying, oh, why don't you produce some black tea as well? Good quality black tea from Yunnan. Like people make a lot of pu'er tea in Yunnan, and they use the pu'er material to make the black tea as well. People saying like when they produce pu'er, they usually like leave the better quality for producing pu'er and leave the not as good quality to produce black tea. There's some cases like that as well, but for some Dian Hong, they are actually like some dedicated tea tree are just planted and just making like Dian Hong black tea.
But there are certain characteristics, the maltiness. In this particular one, there's like a slight smokiness almost as well. Not from like a smoking process or anything, but there seems to be some sort of underlying, whether it's a woodiness or a smokiness that has that. And I find the combination of those flavors makes it undeniably like a Dian Hong. Like if I had this next to a xiaozhong, like a zhensang xiaozhong, even a non-smoky one, it tastes completely different as a black tea.
This is a great tea. This is one of my favorites. I think it's I don't know if it's the fact that it's old trees, but it just has this extra kick that gives it this lastability and this sort of depth, maybe like a bit more minerality.
Mm-hmm.
I really like it.
Yeah, it's a good for me it's a good everyday sort of tea. Like it's quite easy to drink, and one of the, like I do find that Chinese black teas in most cases they're quite easy to drink, and it was my personal introduction to the whole world of tea. So I do for people who aren't too familiar with drinking Chinese teas in general, I do like to say black tea is a good sort of gateway into it, but that's just me personally. Others might find other types of teas as their gateway.
We just drank 2 different black teas One is our Crimson Dusk, and the other one is the Old Tree Red.
Old Tree Red is kind of a more traditional Dan Hong, but this one is made from wild tea trees. With the Crimson Dusk, it's leaves made from using oolong tea leaves, which is same leaves as our Rising Dawn, which is Baijilan from southern Fujian. It's been made into a black tea. We find with there's a lot of teas now, a lot of black teas now being made from oolong tea leaves, and they really do benefit from like slightly lower temperature brewing, shorter infusion times, like brewing a little bit lighter, to bring out more of those kind of fruity aromatic notes that you get with like an oolong tea. Usually in general, Dawn has a much I guess you would say a softer touch. Like in general, like when we're brewing pu'er, black teas, oolong tea, she has a much softer touch. So she does tend to bring out more of the lighter, fruitier, floral notes of different teas. Whereas maybe I'm a little bit more heavy-handed. So I tend to brew teas and I bring out more of the deeper, stronger notes. And in some cases, like with the black tea, like with the Crimson Dust, I don't brew it the best. Compared to, it does benefit from a softer touch. I guess that's why we have the both of us doing this business.
Yeah.
We can bring out different sides of the different teas.
Yeah.
That's it from us today. See you guys in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.